Hello and welcome to the Lock-In Podcast. This is episode 35. My name is Conor Moynihan and I work for Black Knight. We're the domains and web hosting company based in Carlow. We're also a broadband supplier now, and if you want to find out more about that, go to blackknight.com/broadband. But that's all we're going to talk about our business for today, because we're here today to talk about business, yes, but not specifically ours, others in general. And I'm delighted to welcome the CEO of County Carlow Chamber, Brian O'Farrell, onto the show as my guest today. Brian, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Con. Delighted to be here.
Brian, I know we're just looking down the road to talk to you in a way, but in a way, I think that your experience and what you can say really would be reflected by chambers across the country, chambers of commerce across the country. You guys are all in touch with you and with each other, I presume, anyway. And I imagine that the difficulties faced by SMEs in particular, retailers, not only retailers, but other companies, manufacturing and other companies that are trying to manage their business, trying to deal with the restrictions of pandemic and work remotely in many cases, as well as selling online. It's challenging. What are you hearing from your members and from chamber people around the country?
Noel, you're right. The County Carlow Chamber, we're one of 44 affiliated chambers in Ireland. And actually we meet up normally at least twice a week via Zoom to have a chat and to go through what the different issues are. So because, what are the issues in Carlow versus Sligo versus Kerry? There's a lot of crossover, and even the border counties, you'd see where Brexit has been impacting quite a bit differently. It's interesting to hear the different challenges there. I think where a lot of businesses are at the moment is wondering when we're going to be able to come out of this current phase of restrictions. There's a lot of businesses want to get their doors back open, want to get back operating, because we've been through this process for so long now. Cash reserves in a lot of cases are depleted or just about depleting. Businesses don't want to be taking on the burden of extra debt. So cash flow and liquidity is key. And they want to try and get back to being able to supporting the customers and the communities that have been there for them to support them for years. And that's one of the key challenges that I think a lot of businesses have in the current thing, because it's so unclear when they can actually physically open doors.
And that's a kind of a supportive relationship, really, Brian, isn't it, that has to go both ways. I know I live in a rural area. I make a point of supporting my local shop. There's one shop in particular which wasn't, when I moved here first, the shop wasn't there. And then when it did open up, it really became a great resource for the community, an opportunity. It meant I had to drive. It meant a 10-mile shorter drive if I was caught, for example, looking for petrol or something like that, and it made a big difference in that way. So I think that local communities in rural areas, in urban areas, understand the value of, if they want to have the services locally that local businesses provide, they need to support those local employers and indeed their staff as well, who are all part of the community. They're supporting wages for staff and for community members. So I think that's an understanding, do you find from your members that goes both ways?
It is definitely, because they're key in part of the community in so many ways. And the last thing we want to do is to be going. We've seen how globalization has made so many changes, and we've the other side of the world is so near yet still so far away, and that has impacted heavily on the high street, as we know it. Where a lot of there's a lot more vacant premises on high streets across the country now than there was 10 years ago, because it's easier to get a certain product if you want from so far away. But I think this whole pandemic, it has brought that home to people about the importance of local and the availability of products locally. But it's also the production of products locally, which is key as well. And I know there's one thing we've seen as well, is a lot of new startup companies potentially looking at trying to produce products at home rather than importing that as well. So there's a lot of opportunities that can be gained from this.
We were just we were just talking, Brian. We're recording this on Thursday. We're going to publish it on Friday. But today, Thursday, the .ie domain registry has just published the second of its tipping point surveys. Now, these are very interesting. They've surveyed 1,000 consumers and 500 SMEs across the entire country with a fairly representative sample, as I understand it. They've worked with an organisation called Digital Business Ireland. But one of the points that they've made in relation to that is that Irish companies, small businesses, local companies, in the light of pandemic and in the light of Brexit, have specific advantages and specific strengths. They may not have the resources of Amazon or anything like that, but they're just down the road and can get the product to you pretty quickly. It's very interesting, and I'll send you a link to it later on to have a look at. But one of the key things they said is that local businesses have special strengths when it comes to serving local customers. One of those is that they're on the doorstep and that they can very easily get things to people, and especially things that are produced locally. We've seen consumers get an eye-opener in relation to Brexit when they find that extra customs and VAT duties need to be paid.
And it is, because a lot of local retailers, they can transfer, the customer service that we're used to.
Yes.
Into the online because of the fact they're there on the doorstep.
Yeah.
And if you have an issue, they're there beside you. Whereas in a lot of, I suppose, distant transactions, you could be dealing with, a chat function on screen. That's never going to be the same, and it's never going to be able to bring it in. And I suppose one of the big things that we've got to remember is, and we've seen a huge growth in the number of local businesses that have developed an online presence, which is great. But the one thing they've got to remember is, once they create that online presence, they are now on a humongous high street, which is totally different to the high street that they're used to being on. If you walk down the high street now and there's maybe 50 doors, you're bound to see everywhere.
Yes.
Now they're on a high street with 500,000 doors.
Yes.
And that's been a very conservative thing.
Yeah.
And it's trying to make sure that your shopfront is noticed, unless Con knows to specifically go for your domain. And that's kind of one of the challenges, is to bring them forward.
Yeah. Well,
and the other challenge across the country on this as well is, I was talking to a business yesterday, and he said they were looking at and are doing some of the groundwork towards developing an online site and shop and that for their business. He said, but they're having issues with actually getting proper connectivity in their area. Broadband is something we're working on as well. We're surveying at the moment across businesses and personal.
That's right.
And we've also, I was only speaking with Joe Lavin as well from National Broadband Ireland, because we're going to host a meeting with NBI for members to look at, because there's a lot of specific challenges in that there.
Yeah. That's right. You were talking about
Joe
that
Lavin
last week.
Said to me, he said that if there's one real thing that has come out of the pandemic, is a lot of the local providers. They have really come to the fore and been doing a huge job, and they've been a more consistently and a stronger service for a lot of their customers than some of the national providers. And that's one of the things that they've found in the work that they've been doing.
And you're surveying people in Carlow. I know you asked to get feedback and in order to be able to lobby on behalf of better broadband in the region. And we've been sharing your survey as well and trying to spread the word. It's a very, very good cause and a very, very good work to do indeed as well. Now, I'm going to ask you in a minute about a specific initiative. It's one that you'd mentioned to me before. A couple of weeks ago you announced it. It's live now. It's called lovecarlow.ie, and I'm going to ask you about what that does specifically. But first, Brian, can I just ask you, are many of your members I would say working to get online or to add an online or a blended aspect to their business? Is it something you're hearing a lot about?
It is. There's been a huge development of it. I know one of the things we worked quite hard with was to get them to engage with the local enterprise office as well on the online trading vouchers, which is a great way to do it. But we've seen a huge growth in development of online shops, but even just developing an online presence, and having something that's more than a Facebook page. But, because it is key, it can say a lot more about their business. And I think it's one of the things that we've been encouraging businesses to make sure that even if it's, depending on what their products or services are, that they develop at least a landing page that can give an introduction to who they are, because you want to have that window into what you can do and how you can do it. And it's a great resource to have. One of the things is, you want to monitor it and make sure you update it. But I think it's something that every business should have an online presence in that form, because the power of some of the search engines you think that are there at the moment, and if you just search for landscaping in Carlow, what that can throw up, and it's using those keywords and it's reminding businesses about the power of that.
And this new project, I think, from what you were telling me, Brian, is a little bit about reminding Carlow people and local people in this community. I think there's a lesson here for other communities as well about what's available in their own area. Tell me, what is Love Carlow? How did you get it off the ground? And how can both businesses and consumers benefit from it?
Love Carlow started out as a project back in 2016 from the Chamber. And, we've had a number of different areas that we were working on in the past and focusing on regeneration and trying to develop the town. We're currently, the new phase of it, we're redesigning the whole website. And it's about developing, in one way, a directory of every business in the county, whether you're a plasterer, through to a bricklayer, through to an electrician, or a multinational company. It doesn't make a difference. We want to get everybody listed there, because, as I mentioned earlier, just because you develop a website doesn't automatically mean that people are going to flock to you. People need to find a website. What we want to do is, Love Carlow has a strong following already, and we're looking to develop that further. But this will have searchable by the county, but also searchable by areas. So if you're in Ballin or you're in Rathvilly and you're looking for a specific expertise, you could search for it in that way. And that's one of the key things, because it's about highlighting Carlow is open for business and the variety of businesses that we have, because it's one of the biggest assets in the county is the range of expertise we have. And it's to harness that so much more, to remind people right across all the communities about that. So we want to get some of the communities involved in different ways into it as well. But the big thing is to develop this resource. And on the other flip side of it, the Chamber of Commerce, one of our big projects as well that we've been running for a number of years, and we won an award for last year, is Chamber Trade Connections. And that's about building international connections to help businesses in Carlow expand where they trade internationally. And through having this wider resource of all the companies, it can help us as well to strengthen, what we're doing on that front as well.
So I work for a Carlow company, as you know, Brian. We're probably listed already with lovecarlow.ie. If we're not, how do I go about it?
Very straightforward. The old website is still up there at the moment, and there's a link on that. You just click on that link and it will take you into a survey, a registration survey, which you complete your data. Because the key thing is that when businesses register, they're responsible for the data on it. So we want them to put in a bit about their business. You want to give a blurb, give that elevator pitch. What is your business? Where is it? What do they do? Attaching your logo, attaching your contact details is so important. Whether it's a website, email, telephone number, even postal address. People still write letters, and it's very important. You'll want to remember that there's a lot of different ways for people to be able to find you. And once we get all that information in there, we'll be working to pop it in. And at any stage, then people can come back to us and we can update information on that as well. But the key thing is to just register your information in there, because we're in a collection stage for all the registrations at the moment, and that'll be ramping up again over the next week or two. We want to get as many in there as possible to have a good strength on it for the go live for the new site, which would hopefully be in the next 3 to 4 weeks anyway.
Fantastic. We're very much looking forward to it, Brian. I know there are many benefits to being a Chamber member, obviously for businesses. Do you have to be a Chamber member to register or to list your business on Love Carlow?
To register on the site, no, you don't. This is totally open, because we want... we have an existing directory on the Chamber of Commerce site, which is for all members of the Chamber. Now, there is different functionality that will be on the Love Carlow, and all of our members will be listed in there as well. But we want to have every business, every tradesperson registered in the county, because it will make it so much easier to be able to find that product or that service locally, you know, and that's why it's so important that when they're writing that blurb, that description for their business, that they put in a couple of key phrases which signal and identify what they do and what makes them unique. It's so important.
You're doing great work in Carlow Chamber, Brian. How are you yourself? How are things, and how are you managing with this strange existence we have now?
Oh, you know, it's like everything. You've got to learn to adapt and change to it. You know, it's been interesting. It's great. You know, working from home is great, but then it's also good to escape to the office every now and then. Yeah. You know, and I think I've been talking to some people, and I'm probably like most people in Ireland at the moment. I think my setup at home, my home office, is nearly better than in the office, because of the fact I'm simply spending more time there. The one big thing is that, you know, and I know we've been saying it for years, the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 just been gone. I don't even know if it ever really existed. Yeah. But, you know, when you're balancing dealing with different companies on export to helping them through it, to challenge the pandemic, to reopening and when vaccines are going to be available, and then in between that you've got to do some child minding duties. And
yes,
well, I suppose I can't really call it child minding when they're my own boys. You know, you're trying to work with them in different ways. Yeah. I think it was like yesterday I finished a horde of meetings, had a sandwich, went pony riding for a half an hour with the two boys, brought them out, and then I was back into another host of meetings and webinars again for the afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, so it's great, and it's so important to have those other outlets as well, to be able to step away, because it's the one thing that, you know, people are missing a lot of the normal outlets that they would normally have. But the one important thing, you know, I see that we have in the chamber is we've got a lot of strength in the network between members, and that's where it's been key, because I know I've been able to reach out to a lot of members, and, you know, members have been coming back and contacting me for different stuff, and having that I suppose space that you can bounce ideas, you can just even have a chat with somebody on. That's what really makes a difference and helps people through.
Brian O'Farrell, CEO of Carlow Chamber, thanks very much for being our guest on the show today.
Thank you very much, Con.
That's very
Appreciate
good.
it.
That's Brian O'Farrell, our guest today on the Lock-In podcast. It's our show about how we live now. Sometimes it's about business. It's not our business podcast. That's a separate one entirely, which we call the Black Knight podcast. And we're now doing that monthly. You can find that at blackknight.blog/podcast. This show is also hosted on the Black Knight blog, but with a nice handy domain name that you can use to access it. That's the Lock-In.ie, the Lock-In, all one word, .ie. We're on audio, we're on video, we're on all the major platforms, and we've extended our break just a little bit since the last episode, but we are installing new studio equipment here at Black Knight HQ, well, in my home office. And in fact, I've had a request from one viewer to find out more about the equipment we're using. So we may even do a special edition or podcast about that. So the schedule going forward is going to be an episode of this show every 2 weeks, usually on a Wednesday. But from time to time, we may change that and have it on a Thursday or a Friday instead. Good evening, Chéadú Eile mar sin, slán go fóill agus gnáirí live.